Good morning. You're listening to Retake Our Democracy, a 30-minute weekly show that airs at 8:30 a.m. each Saturday morning on KSFR 101.1 FM, your public radio station. I'm Paul Gibson, the host of Retake Our Democracy,
and I'm Roxanne Barber, the co-founder of Retake Our Democracy.
And as our listeners know by now, we are the co-founders of Retake. And today we update and extend last week's conversation of the 2022 legislative session. And rather than just describing the status of a list of bills we're supporting, we will offer constructive criticism of the legislative process itself. And we'll also get to that discussion in just a minute, but first a couple of announcements. If you're driving around town and miss any of this show, you can watch the full YouTube recording of this show and any prior show by going to our homepage at retakeourdemocracy.org and clicking on the right. There's a button that says Retake on the Radio. And so you can check that there. I also want to acknowledge that we're conducting this show on stolen Tewa land. And we want to thank our Tewa neighbors for being such good stewards of the land. Finally, I want to remind you that the 2022 legislative session is almost over. Oh, be it true. It is less than a week to go.
Oh, you're going to miss it.
Not that much. It's not too late for you to get engaged. We send out alerts whenever a bill we support or oppose is scheduled to be heard in a committee or on the chamber floor. It's not too late to get engaged, and as much happens in the last week. Each alert includes a summary of the bill, speaking points, and legislator contact information, as well as info you'll need in order to get to watch and participate in the meetings on Zoom. And this is the 5th year we've been doing the alert system, and so we've got the hang of it. It's pretty much killing us, but we've got the hang of it.
People seem to appreciate it.
And people seem to appreciate it. So you can sign up for the alerts by going to our homepage at retakeourdemocracy.org. Look for the Get Alerts button on the right side of the homepage, and you're in.
I think it says exactly Get Action Alerts.
Correct.
Okay.
It does. In addition to our alert system, we offer weekly Zoom huddles. We began doing these last year, and they're backed by popular demand. And they occur every Wednesday during the session from 6 to 7 p.m. The huddles almost always include 1 or 2 legislators or representatives from ally organizations who are advancing bills. We're told by huddle participants that the huddles are extremely helpful for them to learn how the legislative process really works. And it's a very gratifying group of people that meet every week. And it's sort of forming a little bit of a mini community, online community of people who are actively engaged in the Roundhouse. So,
and you can register for that Zoom huddle by going to retakeourdemocracy.org and clicking on NM legislation in the top menu bar. And then when you get to that page, the information about the huddle, what we're going to be talking about that week is at the top of that page, and there's a link to register.
And you must register to participate.
Yeah, and we'd love to have you.
So that's enough announcements for today. We'd love to have you, as Roxanne mentioned. And so let's get started with the conversation. We have a lot to discuss. Welcome, Roxanne, to today's show. I think that both of us agree that this is as crazy a process as we've seen in our 7 years of advocating at the Roundhouse. Any disagreement?
I was just going to make a joke that you're welcoming me, and we're recording this in our dining room.
That's right.
Welcome me to my own dining room. Yeah, and by the way, we are recording this on late Thursday afternoon, so things are going to be happening tonight and tomorrow. So if you hear something that doesn't sound current, that is why.
Yeah, we don't have a crystal ball.
36 hours before.
And crystal balls don't work in the Roundhouse anyway. Anyway, Roxanne, you've got one of the most important jobs in the whole system here, and that's getting out alerts to our supporters, the people who are on the 2,500 people who get our alerts.
Advocates, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Tell us about why it is so challenging to do this.
Well, it's challenging because, of course, we depend on getting all of our information. Well, not all of it, a lot of it from the Roundhouse itself, and that's at nmlegis.gov. Excuse me. And they often do not post their, excuse me, got a tickle in my throat, their hearing schedules until the night before. So, excuse me, and things can change pretty quickly. Sometimes bills are dropped that were supposed to be heard. Okay, so excuse me for that tickle in the throat. The information that we need in order to disseminate out to advocates which bills are being heard when often comes very late. So that requires checking late in the evening and then writing things up and disseminating them out to activists, advocates.
That's hard enough when it's at 7 p.m. But tell
Right.
us,
And
tell
then
us
part
about
of what's
today.
been happening a lot this year, and I sympathize. It's a 30-day session. They don't have much staff. They don't get paid. We understand all that. But they'll add things to agendas just a few hours before the hearings are going to happen. And then they say, oh, if you want to participate in this hearing, you have to email so-and-so 12 hours before. It used to be 24 hours. At least they changed it to 12 hours. But if you didn't know that bill was going to be heard until 2 hours before the hearing started, obviously you can't check in with them 12 hours before.
No
So
time travel into Mexico.
Yeah, that's frustrating. And if people don't know that those bills are being heard with enough notice, then it prevents them from participating in the democratic process, from getting there on Zoom. Mostly you can go in person this year, but preparing their remarks and offering public comment. So, I mean, if this were a business, it would have been out of business a long time ago. People wouldn't put up with it, but that's why, we won't get into this whole discussion, but that's why we need to pay our legislators and pay the staff more and put more funding into having more staff, because they
improve technology.
Right, that's part of it too. I think that legislative website could definitely use some upgrading.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I just need to add that, it's almost every single night that Roxanne and I are talking about, should we send this out now or should we wait to see if anything changes? And as soon as we send something out, it changes. So we wind up having to send another alert to people. And our fear, of course, is that at some point we're going to have alert fatigue and people will stop taking a look because it's like too crazy. But It is crazy. We're just reflecting the craziness and trying to sort it out.
But most of our core people who are, advocates understand this problem. And so they're very forgiving and,
appreciative.
Yes, appreciative.
So,
oh, okay. So it's definitely been a crazy session. And so let's give an example of one bill in particular that reflects that craziness the best.
Right. Well, one of them, the one that's by far the most insane is HB4, which was the hydrogen hub, which subsequently has been reintroduced as HB 27.
No,
and
227.
227, and buried in what they call a dummy bill with a title that says something about peace, freedom, and justice. And
public peace, no public safety. Okay, never mind. It doesn't matter. The title doesn't mean anything.
And then they have a committee substitute to that bill. And in the case of 227, it was assigned the day it was introduced to House Appropriations and Finance Committee. That's the committee that is ruled by Representative Lundstrom.
Patty Lundstrom, she's the chair, and she sponsored the bill.
And she sponsored the bill.
Well, and this is after the nearly identical hydrogen hub bill, HB4, was died in
House Energy and Environment and Natural Resources.
Right, just a few days before. So they just decided, oh, well, let's just slip in another one. Maybe nobody will notice, and we'll send it to my committee.
And it'll be done before anybody wakes up. but people woke up real quick. And at the end of the day, the speaker wisely,
Speaker Brian Eagle.
Speaker Brian Eagle, in a floor session, towards the end of a floor session, announced that he was pulling that bill and placing it on the speaker's table, which means only he could revive it. And he was pretty much committed to not, because he had another plan, and that was HB 228.
And that came like the following day.
The following day, yes.
And another dummy bill.
Another dummy bill, and assigned to a very friendly House committee, one assignment. That's unheard of, one assignment. And
House Commerce and Economic Development.
yes, and Democratic leadership proclaimed this as just a public-private partnership bill. You don't have to get all hysterical about it. It's not hydrogen hub. But the first sentence of it said that this was for public-private partnerships designed to initiate hydrogen hub activities
Across the state.
across the state.
It was virtually the same bill all three times, HB 4, HB 227, HB 228. The main thing that changed in the last two bills is the tax credits were taken out, but
and
they
so
were the same.
And so we have gone on to identify the hydrogen bills as Hydra, HYDRA, the mythical beast that every time you cut off a head, another one sprung up. And that seems to be what's going on. We had a hearing for it on Wednesday night, and that hearing will finish on Friday. So by the time you hear this, it will have probably passed a House committee and gone to the House floor.
We don't really know that. And that's House Commerce and Economic Development. It's going to be Friday. Oops. Yeah, I
That's
forgot.
what I mean.
We're recording this on Thursday.
And so what I would say is it's a good idea to go to retakeourdemocracy.org and check out what we have going there. Our alerts keep you up to date, and they're available on our website, so that if you go to NM Legis in the banner at Retake Our Democracy's homepage.
No, NM legislation.
I'm sorry, and click on that, and then in the top part of the page, you'll see alerts. And so if you click on that, the most recent alert is at the top, and they're listed in chronological order.
Right.
So
And then actually the first link that you'll see is bills we support and oppose. So if you're interested in looking over that list of bills, you can see them all there. Most of them have links to talking points. And then we've also been updating them in terms of their status, which committees they passed, what the votes were, and that sort of thing. So that's an interesting page, bills we support and oppose or oppose.
Okay, so the HB 228 is going to be an ongoing saga. This will go down to the wire. We are reasonably confident that in the Senate we can stop this bill, but the House might be a bigger challenge because Representative Lundstrom wields a great deal of influence.
Well, and that's one of the things that we should talk about, and I don't know if we'll have time today, how there are a few people who have positions of power in the legislature that allows them to have control over things in a very undemocratic way.
Yes, well, we can talk about that for a minute right now, because this is an unstructured flow. What she's talking about is the House Appropriations Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. And without getting in the weeds, you know, the biggest purpose of this session theoretically is to create a budget.
Because it's a even year session, short session, 30-day session.
30 days.
That's when they're supposed to deal with budget and.
But in any year, they
Tax and
need to
revenue.
pass a budget. And every year, it's the focus supposedly of the 30-day session. And so the governor develops her own budget, and then the House develops their budget, which means Patty Lundstrom develops her own budget. And that happens throughout the interim hearings process. She lands to the session in January and has the bones of that budget figured out. And if you have a bill that has an allocation in it and it's not in that budget, you're dead.
Your bill is dead.
Your
not
bill
you.
is dead. Your bill is dead, basically. I mean, theoretically, it could go to House Appropriations, and that committee would hear it and consider it and say, yes, we have room in the budget for this. But
Well,
that's not what happens. She just tables the bill.
Well, we had former State Senator Dee Feldman on our huddle the other night. And one of the things she said is you've got to get in there early, like months in advance during the interim committees, and start asking for your project funding at that point. You don't just introduce a bill during the legislative session and say you want money then. This is a process that you have to have started many months before to get into that budget. Then you introduce your bill.
But unfortunately, for one of our allies, the people advancing the public bank, they had tried to do that. They had appeared in many interim hearings, and they were unable to get to make it work so that they could get into the budget in advance.
Would meet with them, right?
She wouldn't really meet with them. And it's interesting, when we spoke with Matthew McQueen about it, he's a House rep and a chair. He said he doesn't have any idea how you get anything in the budget.
Oh, you probably shouldn't have said that.
Oh, well, maybe not.
I'm betting he does have some idea.
In any case, we need to take just a brief break right now to acknowledge that to our listeners that we are doing this show from KSFR. It is a public radio station. It runs on a thread. And right now I know they need resources. I've been in communication with their station manager and their lead engineer. They're very short staffed and they're just running on fumes, and something Roxanne and I can relate to. And so if you have some spare change.
Because we have no staff.
Yeah, we have no staff. We are staff with no pay. But in any case, go to ksfr.org and click on the donate button and give them 5, 10, 20, 50 bucks.
$100.
$100. And just think of it as your ticket for admission to really good information. And in an era of misinformation, it's good to be able to get good information from KSFR. So let's get back to it. We were talking about HB 228 and
the hydrogen hub.
And its path will go to the Senate, assuming it passes in the House. And we feel like we have pretty good people lined up in the Senate to oppose it. And one of the lessons we're learning from this session is that having personal relationships with legislators where you have their cell phone and you can text them before, during hearings and during hearings is without a doubt the most powerful way to influence the process.
But that takes some time to build those relationships.
And so part of what we're trying to do at Retake is help our volunteers, our members start to cultivate relationships with their legislators. And many of them are doing it on their own, so that after the session and as we lead up to the next session, they can be in communication. Why don't you tell them about the story of Javier Martinez in the public bank?
Well, during the hearing for the public bank, which didn't pass,
right? Because it didn't have an allocation.
Representative Martinez, Javier, explicitly said, "I'm voting in favor of this bill because I've talked to many of my constituents over the last many months, and I know they really want this." So that was effective. If you're a constituent, talk to your House member, talk to your senator, tell them what your issues are, what you believe in, and let them know. That's why they're there. We elect people, and then most Americans expect, I elected them, okay, good, or you didn't, which happens sometimes. Somebody else wins. They're going to go, do their job, and there's nothing more I can do. It's like over the day you vote, and that is like so far from the truth.
Democracy is a participatory sport,
right? You need to keep engaging with them the entire time they're in office and make sure they know what's important to you. We should all be doing that. How can they represent you if they don't know?
And
they can't.
So after the session, we're going to have a Zoom where we're going to have conversations about what effective advocacy could look like in a crazy roundhouse environment. And that will be a high topic. And we're going to be working with people to help them develop the capacity and the communication skills to work with those legislators and try and move some minds and
or at least educate. Because
right.
Part of the problem, if you're not, because they're not paid, many of them have other jobs. Some of them are independently wealthy, but they don't have the time or staff to really understand the issues. And so what happens is they rely on paid lobbyists to tell them or to explain to them what a bill is about. And of course, those lobbyists are biased toward whatever industry or employer that's hired them. So they're not getting the full picture. That's why it's up to, everyday people like us, residents, to help educate them, not just other people, but the legislators themselves too.
Right. And we've heard from legislators saying, thank you very much. We get a lot of good information from you guys. So it can work. I guess the next thing we want to talk about is the one win we've had so far this year. And it's not at all clear that it's a final win, but it's looking like it very well might be. And it was one of our biggest defeats last year, and that's HB 132. That's the small loan rate cap bill. That's not the actual title of it, but that's what it is. And it's setting a cap rate on small loans at 36%. And
which has been what, 175%
175%
for some years, which is insane.
And last year we almost got that bill through. It sailed through the Senate. I'm going to just give you a real quick, because I talked about this last week. It sailed through the Senate, and then in its second House committee, last House committee before the House floor was House Judiciary, and it got ambushed by an amendment from Representative Alicio Alcon. And it was brazenly introduced by the lending industry. The lending industry representative was right there with him, and he just handed him the bill and said, why don't you explain it? And so it was not subtle at all, but it passed. And then all kind of craziness went, because the bill that passed the House floor was different from the Senate floor, and they couldn't come into concurrence. It was the last day of the session, and it died. And so the prevailing rate remained 175%.
And the storefront lenders were happy about that.
Very happy. So fast forward to this year, and the Fair Lending Coalition was all ready to go, had organized credit union representatives and the president of the credit union to testify compellingly about how they offer loans. They don't charge fees for them, and you don't have to be a member of a credit union, all kinds of details about how they service these loans. And
some of them did say it's $25 to join, but we just fold that into the loan.
Okay.
You don't have to pay it up front.
So we were hopeful that we were going to be able to get it, through this year, but then in order for it to be deemed germane, it had to have a message from the governor, and the governor didn't want to get embroiled in a divisive Democratic Party fight over 36%, which is what happened last year. And so she was not issuing a message. And so Speaker Egolf got clever and worked with Susan Herrera, Representative Susan
And Herrera is the one who introduced the bill, sponsored the bill.
And they introduced a bill that had a small allocation in it for financial literacy training. That was in there for the sole purpose of the House Rules Committee being able to deem it germane, because if you've got a budget bill, an allocation that would go into the budget, that is automatic germane. And so it didn't need a message. But they also knew that if it had an allocation in it, it would sail over to House Appropriations, where Patty Lundstrom would crush it or just never hear it.
Because all bills that have funding allocations in them have to go to House Appropriations and Finance. Yeah.
So now we fast forward to this year, and it's been deemed germane. It's sailed through its first House committee, and lo and behold, here we come to House Judiciary again, with the same committee that killed it basically last year. And then just hours before the hearing was to start, Speaker Egolf appointed a new member of that committee.
Democratic member,
yeah, Democratic, Debbie Armstrong, and she's a strong supporter of the 36% cap rate. And he appointed her a few hours before the hearing, but he announced it in the hearing, and you could just see the air go out of the room. And it immediately showed two of the key Democrats who were in opposition, and they were just stunned.
Did their jaws drop?
Their jaws literally did drop, and they knew the game was over in that committee. And so it sailed through that committee without any amendments except one, and that was from Susan Herrera herself, removing the allocation so that it wouldn't have to go to House Appropriations.
Right.
And so off it went to the House floor, and what we expected was a simple win, turned into a circus. And it was without a doubt the most interesting process I've seen in the Roundhouse in 7 years. It started with a good introduction of the bill by Susan Herrera.
Well, no, I think this part that you skipped is the Alcone.
No,
when it
that the
first came.
introduction first happened, and then
Okay.
he said, "But wait a minute, I don't think this is even
This bill
germane."
isn't germane because it doesn't have any funding in it.
And I can see we're not going to get through the full discussion of it, so you'll want to check out our website where we have the full recording, because we're almost out of time right now. And it's this exciting conclusion. You're going to have to go to
Stay
retakeourdemocracy.org
tuned
and
next
stay
week.
tuned, because that is incredible.
Anyway, the bill did pass.
The bill did ultimately
House.
pass. It is now in the Senate, and we're expecting that it will sail.
I think it passed Senate committee
Yesterday,
yesterday. Yeah.
and it removed one of the amendments that was put on it in the floor, on the House floor.
Yep.
So we'll talk more about that in our full podcast, YouTube podcast that will be available on our website. For right now, I just want to acknowledge all the people who work with us on this stuff. It's not a two-person thing. We have hearing observers, we have people who testify all the time, who are sending letters and making calls. And if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be having the session we're having. And so far, it's been very successful.
Well, and it's always so gratifying when bills do get passed, especially when we didn't expect them to. And that is because, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of people are out there calling and emailing legislators and telling them what they want.
Despite the barriers to doing so. So
right. Yeah, it takes a lot of stamina.
So
to
we'll be
hang in
back
there.
next week. We'll probably do the same format. And what we're going to try and do is wrap up the session. It won't be over because we'll be recording it on Thursday, but it'll be, you know, the next day is just press releases and announcing the budget and things like that. It's rarely any hearings or anything like that. So we should be able to give you a pretty good picture of what just transpired.
Well, and then the following week, we will have a real wrap up because it will be done and we'll tell you about all the great bills that were passed, and you know, stay tuned.
Okay,
next
thank you
time.
very much. And we'll be back next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I thought you had to do 20.